Welcome back to the podcast and today's episode with me, Johnny Pardo. Today I welcome James and we're going to be talking about alcohol and James's expertise around working with people on this. So a quick introduction to James. So James is an Australian-American stop drinking expert, author, investor, entrepreneur and former Sports Center anchor on ESPN. He is the creator of stop drinking organization Alcohol Free Lifestyle, which helps business owners and executives finally break free from alcohol without AA, rehab, or willpower. He is the host of the podcast Alcohol Free Lifestyle and author of the upcoming book Clear, the only neuroscience-based method for high achievers to finally break from alcohol. So James, welcome to the show today. Glad to have you on and thank you for all the work you're doing out there. First of all, I guess my question is, you probably get this many times, but where does your drive come from for helping people break free from alcohol? What's your story behind that?
Well, I grew up in Australia, which was a very big drinking culture. And the cultural conditioning was such that I just thought it was normal to drink heavily midweek, drink even heavier on weekends. And I did that right up until the age of 35. And in 2010, I found myself in Austin, Texas at the annual South by Southwest Festival. I had 2 gin and tonics at a open bar on a Friday night. I went back to my hotel, went to sleep, woke up the next day and just felt blah. And by blah, I mean average. My sleep was a 5 or a 6 out of 10. My relationships were a 5 or a 6 out of 10. My energy levels were a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And I was only 35 years old. And I identified that my drinking habits were the biggest culprit. That really was making me make poor dietary choices. I wasn't exercising. I was irritable. I was stressed. I was envious of other people. And so I committed to stopping drinking for at least 30 days just to clean up a little bit. And I just kept going and going and going. And as we're recording this now, I'm 15 years alcohol free. And
Wow.
in the past 10 years, I've helped create this organization called Alcohol Free Lifestyle. And we help people who identify as high achievers to mostly reduce or stop drinking alcohol completely. And so we have a coaching organization. I have my book Clear. And, we really help executives, entrepreneurs, people who want a better life and have identified that alcohol is holding them back.
That's amazing. Congratulations on the 15 years. That's a brilliant achievement. And yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying about poor choices when I've had alcohol or large consumption, particularly in my 20s. Just like the diet goes downhill, the exercise goes downhill, the kind of the ability to perform mentally goes downhill. So yeah, I love that you're impacting people over the last 10 years with that as well. So you mentioned about high achievers and really supporting them. Is Have you found any link between high achievers and why they perhaps take alcohol? Because there's a lot of people who call themselves high achievers. Some may drink alcohol, some might. I just wondered if you had found any kind of reason why alcohol consumption goes up.
Well, mostly people drink because they're stressed or they're anxious.
Mm,
And like I referenced earlier, cultural conditioning. I mean, if you think back to when you were a little boy, Johnny,
mm,
your parents or the adult figures in your life, depending on your circumstances, probably were drinking around you. And they may or may not have said at some stage, oh, no, Johnny, you can't have a drink. You can drink when you're older. And when they did that seemingly innocent statement, they were implanted an idea in little Johnny's mind that drinking is something you get to do when you are older. It's like a rite of passage. And then, of
mm,
course, you get into your teens and then your late teens, and then you start to drink because that's what the adults do. And now you've arrived, you've gone through adolescence, and now you're an adult and you get to drink. And we just start drinking this attractively packaged poison as if it's just normal. But I submit it's not normal. I submit that it's just attractively packaged poison. And everyone is in on it. Smiling assassins are everywhere. And when I say smiling assassins, I'm referring to the waiter or the waitress who's smiling as they say, "Hey, Johnny, can I get you a drink? Would you like a drink?" Or it's your friends who say, "Hey, let's go out for drinks," with a big smile on their face. Or it's your friends who are like, "Oh, geez, I put on a big one last night. I was a bit drunk last night." And of course, we associate, laughter and fun and with this kind of overconsumption many times. Peak performers have got a drive inside of them. High achievers have got something that's driving them on. And so alcohol tends to be a temporary and illusionary relief from the pressure and the stress of living such a high powered life, which is why we see a lot of peak performers who are very successful. They might be a doctor. I can't tell you how many clients we have who are doctors, which is kind of scary in my mind because these doctors are, and by the way, surgeons, ER surgeons who are coming to our organization and saying they're drinking a bottle of wine a day, if not more, and it's now affecting their work. I'm like, imagine sending your child in for an emergency operation and the doctor is tired, irritable, lethargic, or even worse, under the influence.
Oof.
So to answer your question, it's a combination of many factors. It starts with the conditioning as a child. It continues in your teens. It continues again in the workplace. And people who are high achieving executives, entrepreneurs, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure comes with that. And they're using alcohol to temporarily numb themselves from that pressure.
Wow. It makes a lot of sense what you said about like doctors or surgeons as well. Like that's a highly stressful, you know, not that I'd ever want a surgeon like, or would want anyone ever to have surgery with someone under the influence, of course. But yeah, you like all these high pressure jobs in society, and could I can see the link where you're saying, but yeah, that temporary relief. So yeah, James, I'm just curious with like your journey when you like stopped, the alcohol. Was it just like suddenly get all off of it, or was it just like transitioning off of it?
Well, I went cold turkey. That's the term, right? Cold turkey,
Yeah.
which is just a straight stop. I remember I was having a breakfast in an IHOP, which is an American chain of fast food kind of thing. And this is literally the morning after I had my two Bombay Sapphire gin and tonics. And I was sitting in this IHOP, which isn't a particularly desirable chain of food, I have to say. And I looked out the window and I remember it was overcast and there was a freeway and I'm looking at this thing and I'm just going, what am I doing in an IHOP? Like, what am I doing? And I remember just saying, enough, James, like take a break. So my intent in that moment was just to take a 30-day break. That was it.
Mm.
I had no idea that it would turn into 15 years plus, let alone create an organization that's now helped thousands of people around the world. But my initial intent was 30 days, not going to taper off. I'm not going to do moderation because candidly, I'd tried moderation years before. I'd tried sober October and tried January. I tried only drinking on weekends. I'll just have one drink a night. I tried, oh, I tried all these things. And then, of course, the slippery slope gets you. And then Wednesday or Thursday rolls around and you start making deals with yourself, right? You start saying, oh, I know I said I'd only drink on weekends, but it's Thursday. So, that's fine. I'll have a drink. And then you end up drinking the same way that inspired you to stop drinking in the first place. So my intent initially was just take a 30-day break, cold turkey. I'm not going to do moderation. I'm not going to cut corners. I'm just going to get to day 30. I did it. I lost 13 pounds in 30 days. My skin got better. I slept better. I had an opportunity arise to go and audition to become a sports center anchor on ESPN, which is a big sports news show here in the US. And to my bewilderment, I got the job and I ended up hosting that show for 2 years. And very, very quickly, I realized that there was something to choosing an alcohol-free lifestyle that despite some social awkwardness, the benefits of being clear from alcohol, and by the way, that's the name of my book, Clear,
Mm.
were just so profound that I just kept going and going and going. Got to a year, got to 2 years, 3 years, and beyond.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's crazy some of the benefits you notice when I've certainly, I remember like the start of last year, it's just like, right, I'm going to do 6 months and then just the benefits I was experiencing. And it's like, wow, it's just like so clear and feeling so fresh and energy. Although it was hard at first, it was kind of something. So, yeah, I see what you like, how you sort of went that cold turkey approach. So I was going to ask you, like, in terms of like you touched on earlier about like it often being used for like high stress environments, those kind of things. Like, is there a lot of work that you do with people to find alternative ways of relaxing?
Yes, we take a holistic approach.
Mm,
We know that there is a place and a time for prescription medication, but we submit that all stress and all anxiety, well, let me rephrase that. We submit that most stress and most anxiety can be diminished or extinguished with holistic approaches, including walking barefoot on the grass, connecting to the earth. There's
mm,
an energetic pulse that comes through our body when we're barefoot on the ground, which is called the Schumann resonance. And a lot of studies have shown that if you just walk barefoot on grass or in sand or put your feet in the water, that Schumann resonance is a very calming, peaceful type of energy that tends to reduce the cortisol in our body, which is created through stress and anxiety. So, in other words, connecting to the earth, you can reduce your stress and anxiety. Drinking more water, as simple as that sounds, can be a huge factor in reducing stress and anxiety because it moves the cells around. It flushes out the toxins that we've got in the system. If we're drinking more water, we're urinating more, we're flushing out toxins that we've been consuming. And that can give us an overall feeling of calmness and peace. Breathing, just focusing on the breath. We don't need to go to such extremes as going to a breathwork class, although we can. But even just being intentional about our breath when we're stressed and anxious, just breathing in for 5 seconds and holding for 7 seconds and then breathing out slowly for 10 seconds or 7 seconds or 5 seconds and doing that 3 times. And that can be completed in 30 seconds. That can eliminate cravings a lot of the time. Having good relationships has been shown in repeated studies to reduce stress and anxiety. In fact, one of the world's longest studies of humans comes out of Harvard University, where they've been looking at folks now who are almost in their 90s, if not already. And they've shown that they've been tracking these gentlemen for the last 90 years, and they've just shown that the single biggest component to living a happy life with little stress and anxiety is the quality of relationships. But sadly, a lot of us are in relationships where alcohol is always present, and not only present, but necessary. Alcohol is needed to create a bond. Alcohol is needed for the
mm,
consumer to feel relaxed or stressed, or feel relaxed and not stressed in the moment. And so, learning relationship skills, learning connecting skills, especially for those who feel naturally introverted, can a lot of times really reduce stress and anxiety, which will then ultimately lead to drinking alcohol.
mm. It's interesting on the relationship thing. I mean, what I found personally was there were some people in my twenties, and we would connect really well over alcohol. It was like, we're gonna go for like this night out, or we'd be having a laugh, but then when we weren't having a drink, there just, wasn't as much conversation. There wasn't as much connection, whether that was friends or whatever. But then there were some people where just you wouldn't need a drink to connect. So sometimes I found like alcohol was like being used as a stress reliever, but actually for me, it was like finding those right people and working on my social skills rather than the drinking skills, which is the bad one. So yeah, I love what you said about relationships.
Yeah. And again, I would just invite your listener to ponder how many of my relationships would survive or fail if alcohol wasn't present.
Mm,
And when you do a stock take on that and you look at your friends, you look at your friend group, and you start asking yourself, would I still be friends with this person if we weren't drinking, going to the bar every Sunday to watch football, have a pint? would we have anything to talk about? And if the answer is no, you wouldn't have anything to talk about. Are they really that good of a friend? I'm not
Mm,
saying that they're bad people. I'm just saying
mm,
maybe it's a bad friendship, but it doesn't serve you anymore. Because if you need to drink attractively packaged poison and able to, in order to have a friendship with someone, I think there's something there. There's something to ponder.
mm. I remember I had a friend, and she had meant she had stopped drinking for years, and she was did awesome. She said her whole intimate relationship, which was they split up, was based on alcohol as well, and they realised when she came off of it, it wasn't a relationship basically. So,
Yeah, it's the uncomfortable new reality of the clarity that you get from being alcohol free. You
mm,
know, clear is what you get. Clear. You're clear. Oh, hang on a second. I've been foggy up until this point drinking this alcohol. And it can be quite confronting that when you're feeling great from being clear from alcohol and you're sleeping well and you're calm and you've got peace and you're feeling happy, suddenly you look at your romantic partner and you go, oh, actually, maybe this relationship and this partner isn't best for me. And that can be uncomfortable. I get it. Sadly, most people will just keep drinking and kicking the can down the road. And even though they're in an unhappy relationship, they'll keep using the alcohol to numb the pain of that or to
mm,
procrastinate on making a tough decision like ending the relationship, for example. So, as much as being clear from alcohol and living an alcohol free lifestyle is wonderful and amazing, in the short term, it can also be quite confronting.
mm. When the honesty comes up and the truth comes up from the clarity, from the clearness that giving it up gives. Man, it's a really, really great point, and I've certainly sort of experienced that to an extent as well in my life, and yeah, spoken to others who have as well. I want to touch a little bit on neuroscience because I know you use a neuroscience-backed method. So, yeah, like what is neuroscience for maybe the listener who's not so doesn't has not heard of it before, not come across it, and how does that benefit like moving away from alcohol?
Simply, it's just a study of how the brain works. It's
Mm,
the science of the neurons in our brain, why we do the things we do and don't do the things we do, and why we get triggered, and why, when we drink alcohol, our brain lights up like the 4th of July with fireworks, and our dopamine receptors fire off, and therefore we associate drinking alcohol with dopamine release and excitement and celebration, at least temporarily. That's what neuroscience is. And so in our organization, Alcohol Free Lifestyle, we put together a 90-day stop drinking program, and we have neuroscience educated coaches who help our clients to rewire their mindset around alcohol. So I referenced before one of the longest human studies going on out of Harvard. You know, it's been going 90 plus years. We're well versed in all of those studies, or let's say many of those studies. And there's always new studies coming out of places like Cambridge University or Stanford University. And we go and study those studies about the human brain and how dopamine receptors work, and how, when we drink alcohol, for example, it destroys the white and gray matter in our brain. And that's just one seemingly innocent glass of alcohol per night, by the way. This is not being like what society might refer to as an alcoholic destroying the white and gray matter in the brain. I'm talking about one seemingly innocent glass a night destroys white and gray matter in the brain, which affects the circuitry of our brain, which affects the neurons in our brain, which affects whether we feel joy and pleasure and calm and have a positive mindset, or we have irritability and stress and anxiety and poor sleep, and we're envious of other people and jealousy, and we have a, let's say, compromised view of life. So, neuroscience is really the study of the brain, study how the brain works and operates when we drink alcohol, when it doesn't, when we sleep really well, when we eat really well, when we exercise consistently. And so we bring that science based approach to our coaching, which the University of Washington out of Seattle in the US did a scientific study on our neuroscience-based process in 2023. And the study resulted in a 98% reduction in drinking amongst the study participants. Now, just to contrast that with what AA's reported success rate is, and that is about 7%. So if you just Google AA success rate, there's a lot of different studies, and the success rate can fluctuate depending on what study you read, but most people tend to concede that when basing long-term dramatic change, AA has about a 93% failure rate.
Mm.
And I don't know about you, but if I'm going to the casino and I know I got a 93% chance of losing on any hand that I play, I'm not going to play that hand. I'm going to go somewhere where the odds are much better than a 7% success rate. So that's why I think neuroscience, bringing it up to speed, being empowering and positive, as opposed to something like AA or rehab, which I would submit is quite negative and dark and depressing, and also has a 93% failure rate. That's why I think the neuroscience-based way is preferable.
I wanted to touch on the rehab because I know your ways are a different way to that way. But also wanted to touch on the use of like willpower and why your approach is different from someone just going, I'm going to give up, I'm going to give up alcohol, I'm going to give up alcohol, I'm going to give up alcohol, and then maybe that doesn't work, right? How can this method, this neuroscience way, be beneficial over like just using willpower?
Well, I would submit that willpower is less effective than AA's 7% and rehab's 7%. I would say that's the most ineffective method of all of them. And I only have to just ask your listener to be honest with themselves and say, how often have you tried willpower to moderate your drinking or to stop drinking? And the listener, most of them, 99 out of 100 of them would just say, well, willpower hasn't really worked for me. It's been ineffective. Sure, you may have stopped in dry January or sober October, or you may have even done a few months or 6 months. But then you have one drink and two, and then the slippery slope gets you, and then you return to the same level of drinking that got you motivated to stop drinking in the first place. So I don't even need to point to any scientific studies that show that willpower is ineffective. I've just got thousands and thousands of anecdotal stories shared by our members at Alcohol Free Lifestyle and people who sent me DMs and Instagram and people who've put comments on YouTube videos to know that willpower is probably the most ineffective strategy of them all.
And not just in the area of alcohol, it's the kind of the new year going to the gym approach. Sometimes it works for a couple of weeks, but yeah, I think I've got a mentor who said really good quote. He said, I can have all the willpower in the world to hang on to a ledge, but if you come back in 2 weeks, I'm not there. So
yeah, the willpower is finite, isn't it? Like there's an end to it. Which is why these 30-day challenges, I think, are ineffective long-term as well, because it gives you this 30 days and you've got to get to 30 days and it's tough and you're hanging on. And then you feel like you're a prisoner during those 30 days. And then what happens on day 30? What do all prisoners want to do? They want to break out of prison. And that's why people go and celebrate with a drink. And so they're associating the drinking of alcohol as the reward, as the celebration, as opposed to what I submit is the other way around, which is choosing an alcohol-free lifestyle is the reward. That's the celebration. Because now you have great health and clarity and focus and sleep every single day. You get to celebrate optimal health every single day, as opposed to forcing yourself not to consume toxins and then consume the toxins to celebrate how long you didn't consume the toxins. I mean, we're all crazy.
It's kind of just the kind of pattern sometimes, isn't it, that we follow? But looking at different ways, like this neuroscience method of yours is it's different kind of system. It's like, I'm always a big fan of systems, but it's not trying to force something and else get exhausted, right? So No, appreciate that, James. So, yeah, James, as we kind of wrap up today, I know you are offer a ton more value, particularly if the listener wants to reach out, get support, and then look more into your work. Where can they find you if they want to find out more about your work? And is there maybe a final point that you want to leave us with today?
Yeah, well, the book Clear is available online at all good online stores, at Barnes and Noble and Amazon. You can find it there. It's called Clear, the only neuroscience-based method to help high achievers finally break free from alcohol.
Hmm.
You could also go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/clear, where you can get your hands on the book. And then we have a podcast, which is called the Alcohol Free Lifestyle Podcast, which is in Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And then on my social medias, you can find me at James Swanwick. I'm there on Instagram, and we've got lots of free things there. If you go to the Instagram, you can, get some free resources, a guide there, which will walk you through the outline of how you can successfully stop drinking alcohol.
Amazing, James. No, that's sure to link those all up. And is there anything final you want to maybe re-emphasize or share with us today as we wrap up?
I've had a life with drinking and a life without, and without is just so much better. When I was drinking, I was prone to being tired, irritable, poor sleep, mediocre, being in the drift, feeling stuck. And then when I was clear of alcohol, I had more energy, clarity, and focus. And my life just seemed to blossom in all ways. And I've been 15 years alcohol free now. And I think if your listener can just get some accountability, get some support, get some coaching that can help identify their blind spots, and get in a group of like-minded people who also desire to live an alcohol-free lifestyle, I think they'll find that it's a lot more enjoyable than what they suspect. Because there's a mistaken belief, I would submit, that not drinking means that you're boring or dull, or that you have to stay away from social situations. For me, it's been the complete opposite. I've actually run towards more social situations where there is alcohol flowing, and I just confidently drink a soda water ice and a piece of lime. I feel refreshed, I feel hydrated, I'm connected, I'm speaking to people, and then I get to go to sleep and wake up the next morning feeling the way that nature intended me to feel. Not even feeling that amazing, but just feeling the way that nature intended me to feel, as opposed to those who would choose to drink, even if they've had one or two seemingly innocent drinks. They can wake up with that taste of alcohol in the mouth. They're a little bit tired. They're kind of like, oh, shouldn't have had those drinks last night. Shouldn't have had that late night kebab. Shouldn't have had that dessert. And then they wake up in the morning and now they're tired. So what do? They reach for a sugary substance to give them a little pick me up, give a little bit of energy. But then, of course, the consequences of that is that you have a sugar spike and then a sugar crash. And now you're reaching for a Kit Kat or a Mars bar or a packet of chips or something to get that energy. And then you're tired by the end of the day. And now you want to relieve that tiredness and fatigue by drinking wine or beer or vodka. And then the vicious cycle continues. So I would just submit, I've had a life with and without alcohol, and without is far superior.
Amazing. Thank you, James, for coming on today, and all the work you're doing out there to help people.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.